It's funny what a single star can do. A one tiny yellow digital star. It's not real, it's just pixels on a screen, a data point in an algorithm. But when it's attached to your name, to the business you've poured your soul and your savings into, that one little star feels like a brand. It feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. For me, that one star wasn't just a review, it was a message. It was a carefully crafted piece of shrapnel from a past I thought I had survived, launched directly at my future by the one person who knew exactly where to aim, my ex-boyfriend Joel. The man I had loved, the man whose career I had helped build, and the man who, it turned out, was willing to burn my life to the ground just to warm his own hands. He thought I was ruined. He thought he had won. What he didn't know was that he hadn't just given me a one-star review. He had given me a reason. It wasn't about revenge, not at first, but he made sure it would be about revenge in the end. The day it happened started like any other Tuesday. I was up at 4 a.m., the sky outside my small apartment window still the color of a deep bruise. My kitchen, which also served as the headquarters for Helena's table, my tiny catering business, was already warm and fragrant with the smell of yeast and rosemary. I had a big order that day. A corporate luncheon for a law firm, 100 individual quiches, a mountain of arugula salad with lemon tahini dressing, and my signature salted honey Parker house rolls. It was the kind of order that could pay my rent for the month, the kind of order that made the sleepless nights and the constant gnawing anxiety feel almost worth it. I was kneading dough, my hands dusted in flour, my mind a calm checklist of tasks, when my phone buzzed on the steel countertop. It was a notification from the review platform I used for my business. My heart did a little flutter of excitement. I lived for the feedback, for the validation that came from happy clients. 5 stars were like a shot of pure adrenaline. 4 stars were a welcome pat on the back. I wiped my hands on my apron and tapped the screen, and there it was, 1 star. It was so stark, so aggressively ugly, that for a moment I didn't even process it. It was like a typo, a glitch. My perfect 5.0 average shattered. Then I read the review. The username was HonestEats88. Anonymous, of course. The words, however, were anything but anonymous to me. If I could give 0 stars, I would. It began. Hired Helena's table for a small family gathering, and it was a disaster from start to finish. The food was cold, the flavors were muddled and bland, and the so-called artisan bread was dense and tasted stale. The chicken was dry, a cardinal sin for any caterer, and the vegetables seemed like they came straight from a frozen food aisle bag. Presentation was sloppy and unprofessional. Do yourself a favor and save your money. This is amateur hour masquerading as professional catering. A total disappointment. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, my blood running cold. Every word was a lie, a calculated, vicious lie. I had never catered a small family gathering for anyone matching that description. My food was never cold. I had a fleet of Cambros and a system I'd perfected over years, but it was the specifics that felt like a punch to the gut. The dense bread, the dry chicken. He knew those were my biggest points of pride, the things I was most obsessive about. He knew exactly what my professional fears were, because I had shared them with him, whispered them in the dark, in an apartment we used to share, back when we were a we. I sank onto a stool, the half-kneaded dough forgotten on the counter. My phone buzzed again and again. A text from my friend Clara. Did you see that review? Who would write something like that? Then an email notification. It was the law firm. Hi Helena. We just saw a concerning review online. We need to be sure about the quality for our partners. We've decided to go in another direction for the luncheon. So sorry for the short notice. Just like that. Gone. A month's rent vanished because of a lie. The air left my lungs. The kitchen, which had felt so warm and hopeful just moments before, now felt like a cage. The smell of rosemary was suddenly cloying, nauseating. I looked at the trays of unbaked quiches, the bins of fresh arugula, the soft, pliable dough. It was all a monument to my failure. I knew with a certainty that was as cold and hard as the steel countertop under my hands, that it was Joel. There was no one else it could be. Honest eats 88. The number 88. The number of the apartment we first moved into together. The one where we'd sketched out our dreams on the back of takeout menus. It was a signature, a little inside joke for himself. He wasn't just trying to hurt my business. He was twisting the knife of our shared history. And for a few hours, sitting alone in my silent kitchen, I let him win. I let the despair wash over me. I cried. I thought about giving up, about selling my equipment and finding a 9-to-5 job, where no one could leave a 1-star review on my soul. He hadn't just broken my heart 2 years ago. He was back to grind the pieces into dust. To understand the depth of that cruelty, you have to understand what we had, or what I thought we had. Joel and I met in culinary school. He was the flashy one, all knife skills and bravado, the one who could charm the instructors and talk a big game. I was the quiet one, the one obsessed with sourcing, with the alchemy of turning a perfect sun-warmed tomato into something transcendent. He was the fire, and I was the earth. Together we were supposed to be unstoppable. Our dream was a restaurant called The Hearth. It was my name for it. The idea was simple, but radical at the time. True farm to table, no compromises. We would know the names of our farmers, the breed of our pigs, the patch of dirt our carrots grew in. We spent weekends driving through the countryside in my beat-up hatchback, visiting tiny organic farms, talking to old women who sold eggs from a roadside stand, tasting heirloom apples that were gnarled and ugly but exploded with flavor. We filled notebooks with ideas, with menus that changed with the seasons, with sketches of a dining room that would feel like coming home. I remember one night, sprawled on the floor of that tiny apartment, number 88. We were broke, eating instant noodles but talking about serving $500 tasting menus. Joel was sketching on a napkin. He drew a logo, a simple line drawing of a carrot with deep roots. "This is it, Helena," he'd said, his eyes shining with a passion I mistook for love of the craft. "This is our story, the roots, the earth. No one else is this committed to the truth of the food." I was the one who developed the relationships. I charmed the gruff, skeptical farmers. I set up the supply lines. I created the recipes that honored their produce. Joel was the face, the brand, and I was fine with that. I thought we were a team. But as our graduation neared, a subtle shift began. He started talking less about truth and more about optics. He became obsessed with food bloggers, with Michelin stars, with the idea of being a celebrity chef. He'd scroll through Instagram for hours, looking at the sleek, minimalist plating of famous restaurants in Copenhagen and Tokyo. "Our food needs to look like this," he'd say, pointing to a picture of a single scallop with 3 dots of sauce. "It's not just about taste, it's about the story, the perception." The final argument was about tomatoes. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but it was about everything. I'd found a farmer, a man named Mr. Henderson, who grew these incredible Brandywine tomatoes. They were only available for about 6 weeks in the summer. They were expensive, and they didn't travel well. They were, in a word, inconvenient. But they tasted of pure sunshine. I had designed a whole late summer menu around them. Joel took one look at the invoice and scoffed. "Helena, this is insane. We can get perfectly good hothouse tomatoes year-round for 1/10 of the price. They look the same. Once you cook them down into a sauce and plate it with some microgreens, who's going to know the difference?" I stared at him. It was like he was speaking a foreign language. He will know the difference," I said, my voice quiet. "The whole point is that we know the difference. The whole point is the truth." He threw his hands up in the air. "You and your truth. You're thinking too small, Helena. This isn't a community garden. It's a business. The goal is to get famous, get rich, and then maybe we can afford your precious inconvenient tomatoes. You have to compromise." But I knew in that moment that if we compromised on the tomatoes, we had already lost. The Hearth was just a name, the farm-to-table concept just a marketing gimmick. It was the first time I realized that for him, our dream wasn't a philosophy, it was a brand, an angle, a lie he was willing to tell to get what he wanted. I told him I couldn't do it. I couldn't build a business on a lie. He looked at me with a kind of pity that stung more than anger. "Then you'll always be small," he said. "You'll always be stuck in the kitchen, worrying about tomatoes, while I'm out there building an empire." 2 weeks later, he was gone. He took our notebooks, our business plan, our dreams. 6 months after that, he opened a restaurant in the trendiest part of the city. He didn't call it the Hearth, he called it Viridian. It was sleek and cold, all concrete and glass and dim lighting. But the concept, the story he told every interviewer and food critic, was ours. It was the story of his personal quest for authenticity, his deep connections with local farmers, his unwavering commitment to the truth of the food. He became an overnight sensation, the golden boy of the culinary world. And me, I took what little money I had left and started Helena's Table. I worked out of my own kitchen. I bought a used van. I drove to the countryside every week and bought my ingredients from Mr. Henderson and the other farmers I had built relationships with. It was small, it was exhausting, but it was real, it was mine. And until that 1-star review, it was enough. I must have sat there for hours, lost in the ghost of our past. The sun was up now, streaming into my kitchen, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My phone buzzed again. It was Clara. "I'm coming over." She didn't wait for a reply. 20 minutes later, she was there, letting herself in with the key I'd given her. Clara was my rock. We'd been friends since we were kids, and she had a no-nonsense approach to life that was the perfect antidote to my often overwhelming emotions. She took one look at my face, at the canceled order sheet on the counter, and her expression softened. "Oh, honey," she said, wrapping me in a hug. "He's a monster." I just sobbed into her shoulder, a torrent of frustration and grief and rage. "He used our anniversary," I choked out. "Apartment 88. He wanted me to know it was him." "Of course he did," she said, her voice turning hard. "Men like Joel, their egos are so fragile, they have to build them up by tearing other people down, especially the women who saw them when they were nothing." She pulled back and held my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. "This is not about your food, Helena. You know that, right? Your food is incredible. This is about him being a pathetic, vindictive little man who can't stand that you're happy without him." "I'm not happy," I whispered. "I'm about to go bankrupt." "No, you're not," she said firmly. "We're going to fix this. First, you're going to report the review. It's fraudulent. Second, you're going to call every single one of your regular clients, and you're going to tell them the truth. Not in a whiny way, but in a professional way. Let them know you've been the target of a malicious fake review, and that you stand by your quality." It was the first flicker of a spark in the cold darkness of my despair. She was right. I couldn't just sit here and let him erase me. I spent the rest of the morning on the phone. It was humiliating, but Clara was right. Most of my regulars were supportive. They knew my work. A few were spooked and put their future orders on hold. But it wasn't a total wipeout. The damage was contained, but it was still significant. The lost income from the law firm stung, and the stain of that 1-star review was still there, a glaring red flag for any potential new clients. For the next 2 weeks I scraped by. I took smaller jobs, worked twice as hard for half the pay. The anger I felt towards Joel simmered into a low, constant burn. I'd see his face in magazines at the grocery store checkout, his smug smile beaming next to a headline, like the chef who's redefining honesty in food. Every time it felt like he was laughing at me. I tried to focus on my work, on my truth. I told myself that living well was the best revenge. But late at night, when I was alone, I'd pull up the review and let the rage wash over me. It wasn't about revenge, I'd tell myself, but the thought of it was a bitter, tempting fantasy. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. It was an unknown number with a 212 area code. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another client calling to cancel, but something made me answer. "Hello, Helena's Table," a crisp, professional voice on the other end. "Hello, my name is Anya. I'm the assistant to Eleanor Vance. I'm calling because we need to arrange some last-minute catering for a small private dinner party at her home on Saturday evening. I know it's short notice, but her original caterer had a family emergency. A colleague of hers attended a function you catered last month and recommended you highly. Would you be available? I almost dropped the phone. Eleanor Vance. The Eleanor Vance, the chief food critic for the New York Times, a woman whose words could make or break the most famous restaurants in the world. A review from her was the culinary equivalent of a papal blessing. Just being recommended to her was a victory. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Yes, I'm available. Anya gave me the details. It was a small party, just 6 people, but the guest list was a who's who of the New York art and literary scene. The budget she quoted was more than I made in a month, and then she said the words that changed everything. Miss Vance is very particular about sourcing. She values authenticity and a clear story behind the ingredients. Your focus on local, farm-direct relationships is what caught her eye. My focus on local, farm-direct relationships, the very thing Joel had called small, the very thing he had stolen and monetized and turned into a lie. A wild, audacious idea began to form in my mind, a seed of a plan so perfect, so karmic, it made my head spin. I looked around my little kitchen, at the genuine, hard-won fruits of my labor, and I smiled. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about an opportunity to tell the truth, my truth. And as it turned out, Joel's as well. Catering for Eleanor Vance was the most nerve-wracking and exhilarating night of my life. I felt like I was defending my thesis, my entire culinary philosophy, in front of the ultimate judge. I didn't sleep for 2 days beforehand, obsessively planning every detail. I drove upstate myself to pick up the ingredients, talking to each farmer, hand-selecting every vegetable, every cut of meat. I even brought back a bouquet of wildflowers from a field adjacent to Mr. Henderson's tomato patch to use as a centerpiece. Eleanor's home was a stunning brownstone in the West Village, filled with books and art. She greeted me at the door herself, a formidable woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a surprisingly warm smile. She wasn't just a critic, she was a true food lover. She didn't just want to eat, she wanted to understand. As I worked in her beautiful, spacious kitchen, she came in several times, not to supervise, but to ask questions. She picked up a gnarled-looking heirloom carrot. "This is beautiful," she said, her voice resonating with genuine appreciation. "It looks like it was actually pulled from the ground, not designed in a lab. Where is it from?" I told her about the small family farm near the Hudson, about how they practiced regenerative agriculture, about the specific minerality of their soil. I talked about the lamb, sourced from a shepherd who rotated his flock on wildflower pastures. I told her the story behind the cheese, from a dairy where the cheesemaker sang to her goats. I wasn't just listing ingredients, I was sharing the narratives of the people I worked with, the truth. The dinner was a triumph. At the end of the night, after her guests had left, Eleanor came into the kitchen as I was packing up. She poured 2 glasses of wine. "Helena," she said, handing me a glass. "That was, without exaggeration, one of the most honest and delicious meals I have had in a very long time. Your food doesn't just have flavor, it has a soul." I felt a blush creep up my neck. "Thank you, Miss Vance. That means the world to me. Please, call me Eleanor," she insisted. "Tell me, why are you hiding in the catering world? A talent like yours should be front and center. You should have your own restaurant." And there it was, the opening. I took a sip of wine, the liquid courage I needed. "That was the original dream," I said, letting a note of wistful honesty enter my voice. "My former partner and we developed a concept together, very similar to this, all about the story, the connection to the land." Her eyes lit up with interest. "Oh, what happened?" This was the delicate part. I couldn't sound like a bitter ex-girlfriend. I had to be measured, professional. I had to be a storyteller. "He was more ambitious," I said, with a small, sad smile. "He had a bigger vision. He took the concept and ran with it. Built an empire." I paused. "You've probably heard of it. Viridian." Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. "Joel's place. Of course. He's the poster boy for farm to table. I've been meaning to review it for months. Everyone says he's a purist. I just nodded, letting the word purist hang in the air between us. I didn't need to say anything more. I had planted the seed. I had tied my name and my authenticity to his. I had created a narrative. She would go to Viridian now, not just as a critic, but with a question in her mind. She would be looking for the soul I had just shown her. The soul I had told her was the foundation of his success. As I drove home that night, the city lights blurring past my window, I felt a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about getting back at Joel anymore. It was about reclaiming the story he had stolen from me. But to do that, I needed more than just a well-placed suggestion. I needed proof. I needed a smoking gun. And I had no idea where I was going to get it. The answer came from a place I never expected. About a week later, I got a message on social media. It was from a name I vaguely recognized, Marcus Cole. I racked my brain, and then it hit me. He had been a line cook at the culinary school, a few years behind Joel and me. He was quiet, intense, and worshipped the ground. Joel walked on back then. The message was brief. Helena, I know this is random. I used to work for Joel at Viridian. I need to talk to you about something. It's important. We agreed to meet at a nondescript coffee shop, halfway between my apartment and his. He looked older than I remembered, tired, with dark circles under his eyes. He fidgeted with his paper cup, avoiding my gaze. Thanks for meeting me, he started, his voice low. I feel like a traitor doing this, but I can't. I can't be a part of it anymore. I quit last week. A part of what? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of a disillusionment that I recognized all too well. The whole thing, Helena. It's all a lie. The whole farm-to-table story. It's a sham. He told me everything. He explained that for the first few months, they had tried. They used some of the suppliers I had originally sourced. But as the restaurant got more popular, and the pressure to increase profits mounted, Joel started cutting corners. First it was the vegetables, then the meat, then everything. We have a standing order with Cisco, he said, the name of the massive industrial food distributor, landing like a stone in the quiet coffee shop. Twice a week, a massive truck pulls up to the back alley at 5 a.m. We have to unload it before the rest of the staff gets there. The produce comes in pre-chopped bags. The fish is frozen. The chicken is from a factory farm on the other side of the country. We keep a few boxes from the real farms in a separate walk-in, for when journalists or VIPs come for a kitchen tour. My blood ran cold. It was worse than I had ever imagined. He hadn't just compromised on the tomatoes. He had set the entire concept on fire, and was selling the ashes as artisanal charcoal. Why are you telling me this, Marcus? I asked gently. Because I believed in it, he said, his voice cracking. I believed in the story. I remember you and Joel in school, talking about it. It's why I wanted to work for him. I thought we were changing the world of food. But we're just storytellers. We're selling a lie to rich people who want to feel good about themselves. He took a deep breath, and then I saw what he did to you. The review. I recognized the apartment number. Everyone in the kitchen knows he's obsessed with you, with your new business. He talks about it. He checks your social media. He saw you were getting traction, getting good reviews, and he couldn't stand it. It was the last straw for me. It's not just about the food. It's him. He's become a monster. I just sat there, processing the sheer scale of his fraud, the audacity, the arrogance. I have proof, Marcus said, pushing a small USB drive across the table. I've been collecting it for months. Copies of the Cisco invoices, photos of the deliveries. I even have a video I took on my phone of the truck in the alley, and text messages from Joel, telling me to make the Cisco stuff disappear before the morning crew arrives. It's all there. I stared at the small piece of plastic and metal. It was a bomb that could level Joel's entire empire. For the first time, the question of revenge wasn't a fantasy. It was a choice, sitting right in front of me on a slightly sticky coffee shop table. I thought about the humiliation of that one-star review. I thought about the canceled law firm lunch, the sleepless nights worrying about rent. I thought about the dream he had stolen, a beautiful, honest thing that he had twisted into a grotesque, profitable lie. I picked up the USB drive. My hand was perfectly steady. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice clear and cold. "You've done the right thing." He nodded, a look of profound relief on his face. "Just do what you have to do," he said. "Someone needs to tell the truth." I went home and plugged the drive into my laptop. It was all there, just as he'd said. Invoices for thousands of dollars of mass-produced, frozen, pre-packaged food. Grainy photos of a giant Cisco truck parked behind the pristine, ivy-covered walls of Viridian. A video where you could hear the beep-beep of the truck backing up. A sound so mundane, so industrial. It was the antithesis of everything Viridian claimed to be. The next day, I went to a copy shop in a different neighborhood. I printed out the most damning invoices. I printed the photos. I bought a plain manila envelope and a book of stamps. I typed Eleanor Vance's address at the New York Times on a label. In the from field, I just typed, "A believer in the truth." I sat in my apartment for a long time, the unsealed envelope on my table. Clara came over. I showed her everything. "Oh my God," she breathed, looking at the photos. This is dynamite." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. "Are you sure you want to do this? There's no coming back from it." "He tried to ruin me, Clara," I said, my voice low and even. "He tried to destroy the one thing I have that's mine. He didn't just leave a bad review. He used our most intimate memories as a weapon to try and bankrupt me. What do you think would have happened if Eleanor Vance hadn't called? I would be done. Over. All because his fragile ego couldn't handle the fact that I exist without him." I picked up the envelope. The weight of it felt significant, final. "It's not even about me anymore," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. "It's about the farmers he's cheating. It's about the customers he's lying to. It's about Marcus, who quit his job because he couldn't stand the hypocrisy. Joel built a temple to honesty on a foundation of lies. It deserves to crumble." It wasn't about revenge, until it was. And in that moment, I realized revenge wasn't always a fiery, passionate act. Sometimes it was cold. It was calculated. It was as simple as putting a few pieces of paper in an envelope and dropping it in a mailbox. A few days after I mailed the package, I called Eleanor's office. I got Anya on the phone. We exchanged pleasantries, and I thanked her again for the opportunity. Then, I made my move. "I was just thinking about my conversation with Eleanor," I began, my voice light and casual, "and how much she values authenticity. It made me think of my ex-partner's place, Viridian. He's built such an incredible reputation as a purist. I'm sure Eleanor is busy, but if she's looking for the quintessential farm-to-table story, that's the place everyone talks about. It's really the gold standard." I was laying it on thick, but I was counting on her professional curiosity, on the irresistible lure of a place with a perfect, seemingly unassailable narrative. A true critic doesn't just want to confirm what everyone thinks. They want to test it, to verify it. I was handing her the story on a silver platter, all while my anonymous package was making its way to her desk to provide the footnotes. "That's funny you should mention it," Anya said. "Eleanor was just saying she needs to bump Viridian up her list. Thanks for the reminder, Helena. I'll make the reservation this week." I hung up the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. The trap was set. The fallout was not immediate, but I heard the tremors through the industry grapevine. Marcus, who still had friends on the inside, became my unwilling intelligence agent. The news that Eleanor Vance was coming for a review sent Viridian into a state of controlled chaos. According to Marcus's sources, Joel called an all-hands-on-deck meeting. He was apparently sweating, but trying to project an aura of supreme confidence. "This is it," he announced to the staff. "This is the review that gets us our 3rd star. This is what we've all been working for." What they had been working for, it turned out, was a grand piece of theater. Joel went into a full-blown panic mode, but it was a panic dedicated to perfecting the lie, not correcting it. He suspended the Cisco orders for the week. He sent his sous chefs on a mad dash to every farmer's market within a 100-mile radius, telling them to buy anything that looked rustic and authentic. He paid Mr. Henderson, my Mr. Henderson, an exorbitant amount of money to park his old, charmingly muddy pickup truck near the restaurant's entrance for 2 days, filled with empty vegetable crates, just for the visual. He drilled the staff relentlessly. The waiters were given scripts, little stories to tell about each dish. The carrots in this puree were hand-pulled this morning by a lovely woman named Agnes, just outside of New Paltz. Agnes didn't exist. The carrots were from a plastic bag, but the lie had to be seamless. The kitchen staff were instructed to stage the walk-in cooler, hiding all evidence of their industrial suppliers and showcasing the photogenic, market-fresh produce. It was a movie set, and Joel was its frantic, tyrannical director. One evening, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I knew it was him. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. He called again. I ignored it. A text message appeared. Helena, pick up the phone. I stared at the screen, a small, cold smile on my face. The panic was starting to leak out. He was probably calling to gloat, to tell me the New York Times was at his door, to rub my nose in the success he'd built on my back. He had no idea he was calling the architect of his own demise. I did not reply. My silence was a weapon now, and it was far more powerful than any angry words could be. The night of the review came and went. I imagined the scene: Eleanor Vance, sitting in that cold theatrical dining room, her sharp eyes missing nothing. I imagined Joel, hovering in the kitchen, tasting every dish, his entire future balanced on a bed of microgreens and lies. A week passed, then another. I focused on my work. I had picked up several new clients, word-of-mouth recommendations from Eleanor's party guests. My little business was slowly, steadily recovering. I was starting to breathe again. And then, one Tuesday morning, exactly 4 weeks after the one-star review had tried to kill my business, Clara sent me a link with no text. Just the link. It was to the New York Times dining section. The headline was plastered across the top of the page: "The rot at the core of Viridian." My heart stopped. I clicked on it. Eleanor's prose was, as always, brilliant and brutal. She started with praise, lulling the reader into a false sense of security. She praised the decor. She praised the service. She even praised the technical skill of the cooking. "Mr. Aston is without a doubt a chef of considerable talent," she wrote. "His sauces are refined, his plating is artistic, and his understanding of flavor composition is sophisticated. By all appearances, Viridian is a temple of modern gastronomy." And then, the turn. "But a temple built on a lie is nothing more than a hollow shell, and Viridian, for all its posturing about truth and authenticity, is fundamentally, shockingly, fraudulent." She dedicated the next 1,000 words to systematically, mercilessly dismantling the entire myth. She described the stories the waiter told her about the hand-pulled carrots and the pasture-raised chickens, and then she deployed the bomb I had given her. According to documents and photographs provided to this paper by an anonymous source, deeply familiar with the restaurant's operations, the narrative so carefully crafted by Mr. Aston is a work of fiction. While he may tell stories of quaint local farms, his primary purveyor appears to be Cisco, the multinational food distribution giant. The hand-pulled carrots, according to invoices, are likely the same pre-peeled baby carrots available to any hospital cafeteria. The pasture-raised chicken is an industrial product, delivered frozen. The story Viridian sells is a beautiful one. It is also a lie, told for the express purpose of charging exorbitant prices for ingredients that are, at their core, utterly mundane. She ended the review with a sentence that I would remember for the rest of my life: "There is a difference between storytelling and fraud. Viridian has not only blurred that line, it has erased it entirely. The food is technically proficient, but it has no soul because its foundational promise is a deception. One does not leave Viridian feeling nourished. One leaves feeling duped." It wasn't a one-star review. It was a journalistic execution. The article went viral. It was the talk of the food world. It was picked up by blogs, by local news, by national morning shows. Joel wasn't just a chef with a bad review. He was a con artist, a symbol of everything that was wrong with modern image-obsessed dining. The family exodus, as Clara called it, began almost immediately. The first to go, after Marcus, was the pastry chef, a talented woman who had been lured to Viridian with promises of creative freedom. She posted a long statement online about her disappointment in the restaurant's lack of integrity. The head waiter, the one who had been forced to recite the fake stories, quit the next day. He couldn't face the customers. Then the suppliers, the few real ones Joel kept for show, pulled their contracts. They didn't want their good names associated with his scandal. Mr. Henderson sent me a text. Heard what happened. Good for you. Investors started pulling out. Reservations were cancelled en masse. The phone at Viridian, which once rang off the hook with supplicants begging for a table, was now ringing with angry calls from the media. The family that Joel had built, the adoring staff and fawning culinary community, abandoned the sinking ship. They weren't a family built on loyalty. They were a crew built on a paycheck and a lie. And the lie had just been exposed. About a week after the review dropped, he showed up at my apartment. It was late. I saw him through the peephole, standing in the hallway of my building, looking haggard and lost. I almost didn't open the door, but I wanted to see his face. I opened it and stood there, blocking the entrance. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was a mess, and his eyes were wild with desperation. "Helena," he breathed. It was a plea. "How could you? How could I what, Joel?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You ruined me," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Everything I built, it's gone. Because of you. You were always jealous. You couldn't stand to see me succeed." I almost laughed. The sheer, unadulterated narcissism of it was breathtaking. Even now, at the absolute bottom, it was still my fault. My jealousy, not his lies. "What we built," he tried, switching tactics, his voice softening into the manipulative purr I once found so captivating. "Our dream. You just threw it all away." "Our dream," I said, and the calm finally broke, replaced by a cold, hard anger. "Our dream died the day you decided hothouse tomatoes were good enough. Our dream died when you chose optics over truth. You didn't build our dream, Joel. You built a cheap knockoff and slapped my ideas on it like a designer label. You stole my work, you stole my story, and then, when you saw me starting to build something of my own, something small but honest, you tried to burn that down too. All with a petty, anonymous little review." He flinched, the first sign that he understood. "So don't you dare," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "stand in my hallway and talk to me about what I destroyed. You did this, every last bit of it." He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The charismatic, confident chef was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out man who had been undone by his own reflection. He had nothing left to say. There were no more lies to tell. I closed the door in his face. I didn't slam it. I just closed it, quietly and firmly. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The final act of the drama didn't happen in a shouting match or a tearful confrontation. It happened, fittingly, at a farmer's market a few months later. My business, Helena's Table, was flourishing. The Eleanor Vance review had included a small but powerful mention of me at the very end. "For those in search of the authenticity Viridian promised but failed to deliver," she'd written. "One might look to the smaller, more passionate artisans of the culinary world. Artisans like Helena, whose food tastes, quite simply, like the truth." That one sentence had been a rocket booster for my business. I was now so busy, I had to hire a small staff, including Marcus as my head of operations. We were a team, building something real. I was even scouting locations for a small restaurant, a place that would finally bring the hearth to life. I was at the Union Square Green Market, talking to a farmer about his new crop of sunchokes, when I saw him. Joel. He was across the square, looking thin and pale. He wasn't the confident, swaggering chef anymore. He looked like just another person, lost in the crowd. Our eyes met across a stall of vibrant red and yellow peppers. He started walking towards me. My first instinct was to turn away, to flee. But then I stood my ground. I was not the same woman he had left. I was not the same woman who had cried over his one-star review. He stopped a few feet in front of me. The bustling market swirled around us, a world of vibrant, honest commerce. A world I belonged in, and he was now a ghost haunting its edges. "Helena," he said, his voice raspy. "I'm sorry." It was pathetic. The apology he should have given years ago, the apology he should have given after the review, offered up now, only because he had lost everything. It meant nothing. I just looked at him, not with hatred, but with a kind of clinical pity. He was waiting for a reaction, for anger, for tears, for forgiveness, for something. I gave him none of it. "You know, Joel," I said, my voice even and clear, "I spent a lot of time thinking about that review you left me. The Honest Eats 88 review." He winced at the name. "I was so angry," I continued, "that you would write such specific cruel lies. But I realized something. You weren't really writing about my food. You wrote that the bread was dense. That's because you were afraid your success was hollow. You wrote that the chicken was dry. That's because you knew your passion had dried up. You wrote that the flavors were muddled and bland, because you had lost your own sense of taste, your own point of view. You didn't just leave a review, Joel. You wrote down every single one of your insecurities about yourself, and you signed my name to it." I let that sink in. He stared at me, his face ashen. "And the review that ruined you," I added, delivering the final blow with surgical precision. "The one in the Times. You wrote that one too. You built the lie. You performed the lie. You perfected the lie. All Eleanor Vance did was write down what she saw. You were the author of your own downfall. You just didn't know it." I didn't wait for a response. I gave him a small final nod, turned my back on him, and walked over to the next stall to buy some apples. I could feel his eyes on my back, but I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. He was a part of my past, and my future was waiting for me, smelling of fresh earth and ripe fruit. It's been a year now. The for lease sign went up in the window of Viridian, about 6 months ago. The sleek, cold space sits empty, a monument to a spectacular, and deserved, failure. Sometimes I walk by it on my way to my own restaurant. It's a small place, just 12 tables. We call it the Hearth. It's warm, and it's always full. Marcus is my partner. Mr. Henderson's Brandywine tomatoes are on the menu every summer. We have a 5-star rating, and every single one of them is real. I've thought a lot about what it means to get revenge. In the beginning, my plan was born from a place of deep hurt and a desire to see him suffer, as he had made me suffer. But in the end, it was simpler than that. Joel built a palace on a foundation of lies. All I did was open a window and let the truth shine in. The whole thing collapsed on its own. He wasn't destroyed by my vengeance. He was destroyed by his own character. And that, I've learned, is the most satisfying kind of justice. You don't have to burn down their life. All you have to do is hand them the match and let them do it themselves. They almost always will. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for your work? Or worse, try to sabotage your success out of jealousy? It's a painful and lonely experience, and I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. It helps to know you're not alone. And if you found some satisfaction in this story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you for listening.